Jnananjana Salakaya Tatthurumilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayamrupa Padamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnava Amsa Shri Rupam Shrivajatam Shahnara Gunathanvitam Tam Sudhiyam Sadvaitam Sadhutam Parijanam Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagna Lalita Sri Vishakhanutam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinbandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapt Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishavanusita Devi Parnamami Hari Priya Vanchikal Pataru Vyasya Kripa Sindhu Patitanam Pavane Vaishnavi Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Prasarine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Prasad Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityanando Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasati Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram. Yeah, this is Mal Bhakti Vrinda ki jai. Okay, Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranams to everybody. So we are going to start remaining part of chapter 16. So this chapter is the divine and demoniac nature, and chapter has 24 verses. So we read until verse number 10, and we'll read from 10 to 24. So until 20, the verses are talking about activity of the demoniac people, Asuric pravritti type people, and then how they can give up the demoniac tendencies by following the Shastra. So that is given in verse number 20 to 24. So I'll just quickly run through the slides and then we'll start from number 10. So there are two types of people, good people who are divine, who have divine qualities, and then people bad qualities. And these two are basically fruits of the material world, the perverted tree that we saw in the previous chapter. So there are 26 qualities of the divine people are given, and then also some qualities, not all, some qualities of the demoniac people are given. And then we also went over other references where these qualities are mentioned. And then what are the destination of the bad and good people, and how they see this material world, such as their vision is that it's false, it's asatyam, it's apratishtham, there is no foundation, it's aneshwaram, there is nobody who is controlling uh, this material world. And then they think that kama ahitikam, this has come into the existence because of the sexual desires. It's product of the kam vasana. That's what the demoniac people think about this material world, and they are lost within themselves with all of these bad qualities that they possesses. With that, they are lost within themselves, and they are engaged in ugra karma. Ugra karma means activities which are horrible, horrible for themselves, horrible for the whole mankind. And then Prabhupada in the purport is talking about the scientific advancement and how, in the name of scientific advancement, society has come to the stage where they can be nullified, they can be completely, destructed in any minute of time. And then, with that demoniac behavior, they conduct the social activities, they are engaged in things which are unsanitary, and they are acting. So, uh, we'll start from verse number 11. Verse number 11 is a very beautiful verse. This chapter as a whole is a very, very powerful chapter. It's a very simple chapter, straightforward, to the point. Krishna is very clearly, giving the instructions to all of the conditioned soul, that how they can develop their sight to see what is godly quality and what is bad quality, and how basically one can slowly and slowly get rid of the bad qualities and come to the good quality. That's how this chapter will end. We will go through verse number 11, and this verse is very beautiful verse. The translation and the verse itself. So it says that chinta aparimeyam cha pralayantam upasritah kamo bhoga parama. That's beautiful wording right there. Kamo bhoga parama eta vadati nishitaha. So, chinta premium cha, they have uh, immeasurable amount of anxiety. The demoniac people, they have immeasurable amount of anxiety. And I'm sure all of us are very aware, being the part of the corporate world and being part of whatever we do have a lot of anxiety about so many things, so much stress about things of no values. So chinta apremyam cha pralayanta pralayantamu pralayantam upasritah pralayantam upasritah. And this anxiety is basically not for a short duration of time, but they carry that anxiety all the way up to even end of their life. This anxiety is basically they are carrying throughout their life. They will leave the body in anxiety, immeasurable amount of anxiety. Kamo bhoga pramam. What is that anxiety? Thinking that calm and bhoga, you know, bhoga means basically the sensual pleasure, and kama means their lusty desire. So thinking that the sensual pleasure, sense gratification, or fulfilling their lust is the highest most goal. And with that, whole life they take anxiety even at the time of death. And then verse number 12 will be another beautiful verse that says that Asha Pashu Satair Baddha Kam Krodha Prayana Ihante Kam Bhogarthan Anyayena Artha Sanchayan. So Kam Krodha Prayana, they are completely merged in Kam and Krodha, completely drowned in Kam and Krodha. Asha Pasha. Pasha means basically the network, Jal. Asa Pas. Asa means desire. Asa Pasa Satair. Thousands of Baddha means bound. So they, with their desire, furtive desire, which is driven by Kam and Krodha, they are bound by this network. And what that network does is that ihante kama bhogartham anyan artha sanchayam. The whole life they are engaged in securing the money by illegal means for sense gratification. Very clear, very beautiful. So asa pasa satar satar baddha, with the desire, they are bound by the uh, network, by the jal, and then they are engaged in the activity of sensual pleasure. So how clear we can hear very clearly Krishna is saying here that what are their activities. In the purport, Prabhupada has mentioned that the law of nature do not allow a second beyond what one is destined to enjoy. So even I wanted to uh, highlight that because although one is trying to work very hard uh, with the motivation that if we work hard, then I can change my distress. I can change or I can alter the suffering that I'm going to see. So one is not aware that the amount of happiness and amount of pleasure one will receive is already predestined. So, so not knowing that, that super soul is also witnessing in his heart, not knowing that the amount of happiness and pleasure that they are going to see is predestined, not knowing the presence of Supreme Personality of Godhead at Super Soul, such fools act freely to do anything for the sense enjoyment, regardless of the consequences. Hare Krishna. Hope these words will have some impact on my consciousness. Very deep. So that's what these two verses are talking about. Very straightforward. Yasila Prabhupada. So then we'll move to verse number 13. The demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I'll gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. That's very, normal tendency, very common that we see in the mankind today. Thinking that I have some, and if I work hard, I can acquire some more. And then verse number 14 is a very powerful verse that talks about that how by doing these things they develop the mentality to lord over on the uh, material world. Ashau maya hata satru satru hanishya chapranapi ishwaro ham bhogi sidho ham palwan sukhi. Wow. So thinking that there is somebody who is inimical with me, and if I kill that person, then once my all the enemies are gone, then I will lord over everything. I'll be the enjoyer, and I will be powerful and happy. Ishwarvaham, I'll be the controller. Aham bhogi, I'm going to really dominate, control, and enjoy. Shidhau, Shidhu aham, I'm going to be perfect, and Balwan, Shukhi, I'm going to be strong, and I'm going to be happy. So with that type of mentality, the demoniac people see others as enemy. So the most important point here is that this inimical and envious mentality that they develop with a tendency that they're going to lord over this material world by developing uh, uh, this so-called Ishwar Bhava. So we see that very common now in the society, that people are trying all the hooks and crooks to lord it over and try to basically demote the people who they think they are going to be their competitors, or one day they are going to stand parallel in front of them, not knowing that everybody has been given their own area of uh, activities, kshetram, and everybody will, doesn't matter how hard they try, they will operate in their kshetra. That's why we studied this subject kshetra, and with that background, this make more sense. So verse number 14, I am the richest man. That's the mentality of the demoniac people, surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. So it's slightly getting higher now. Now the tendency is more to get into uh, dharma, arth, kam, moksha, puja, labh, and pratishtha. That now the person thinks that okay, I am the richest among all the people who are living in my neighborhood or in my country or my state or wherever he or she belongs to. So there is no one so powerful than I. And then his pravriti, his desire is now more to engage in ritualistic activity. And you will hear, in the next verse, what's their motivation when they are trying to engage in the ritualistic activity. This is verse number 60. अनेक चित्त विभ्रांतः मोह जाल समावृतः प्रसक्तः काम भोगेषु पतन्ति नरकेषु च. So अनेक चित्त विभ्रांत, thus perplexed by various anxiety. Moh jala samavritah, bounded by network of illusion. Mohjal samavritah. Prasakta kam bhogeshu, they become strongly prasakta, means completely attached. Ashakta means attachment, and when uh, is added, then it makes it strong. Pra ashakta means a strong attachment. For what? Kama and bhogeshu, for the subject of sense enjoyment, sensual pleasure. And then what is the result? Patanti narake shucho. With that mentality, they fall down into hell. So the process of falling down of a demoniac person to the hellish condition of life or to the hell is very systematically given here through the series of verses from 10 to verse number 16. So we'll talk about verse number 17. And verse number 17 is talking about their hypocritic nature. This demoniac personality, they do things for show off. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So they take the, they say that a soul who are serious to process of bhakti, they take dharma for upliftment. They use instructions of Shastra to uplift their consciousness. But when demoniac people, when they take Shastra, or they seems to be taking the Shastra, but they take Shastra to misutilize the Shastra. They use Dharma to misutilize the Dharma for their benefit. So this is what basically mentioned here in this verse number 17. Atma संभावितः आत्मसंभावितः स्तब्धः धनमान मदान्वितः धनमान मदान्वितः यजन्ते नाम यज्ञस्ते दंभे ना विधि पूर्वकम. Very clear. So आत्म संभावितः स्तब्धः, self-complacent and always impudent. Dhana mana madanvitaha, deluded by dhana, wealth, mana madanvita, with false prestige. What they do, here is the key. Yajante nama yagyaste. They sometimes proudly do sacrifices in name only. Dambhe na vidhi purvakam, without following any scriptural rules or regulations. So they do things, they do things, not criticism, but that's what even you see, most of the so-called religious people doing in the society today. That atho mant, tatho pant, doing things the way it feels like or the way it makes sense to do without following the injunctions of the Shastra, because their goal is not to please Supreme Personality of Godhead, or not do anything that will basically help them grow or uplift in their consciousness, because they are not thinking about self-realization. Their goal is, as we saw, that they are demoniac personality, so they are trying to basically show off and do things just for sake of doing. For what? For man and madanvita, to get some naam and to get some pratishtha, which is false prestige. So their objective is not self-realization, rather they are doing things for dhan, man and madanvita. Beautiful. Now another very powerful verse number 18, further talks about their demoniac activities. Ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham cha samsritaha mam atma pardar heshu pradvishanto abhyah shuyakaha. So ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham cha samsritaha. They take shelter of false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, and are thus bewildered. Samsritaha. Mama atma pra deheshu pardvishanto avya shuyakaha. They become envious of me. Krishna is saying that shuyaka. Shuyaka is especially referring here to becoming envious to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Pradvishanto avyak shriyaha. Pradvishantaha means blaspheming. So they talk nonsense about Supreme Personality of Godhead because they are envious of the Supreme Personality of uh, Godhead. So that's what is the demoniac personalities do. Who the Krishna is and who they always confuse, uh, justifying their false ego, saying that uh, my Lord Ganesha is superior, my Durga is superior, Kali is superior, Jesus Christ is superior. They have nothing to do with Durga, Kali, or Jesus Christ. Srila Prabhupada said that a Vaishnava has a due respect for everybody, and a worshipper of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a worshipper of everyone. They are respecting everybody. They have a proper respect because he is seeing everything as it is. And what is that verse? Vyasatmika buddha buddhi eka kurunandana. The one who is excellent, the one who is intelligent in their dealings, they focus on Supreme Personality of Godhead because they know that by doing that, all other goals are being achieved. So they don't unnecessarily try to take shelter of their false ego. Oh, my lineage has been worshipping Ganesh, so Ganesh is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why? Because my parents have been doing it. Some sort of false pride. Nothing that is based upon the shastric injunctions. So that's even higher. But there are people who don't even believe in the God. They would not believe in the God. So if you really try to see that. Of course, human beings are better than animals, but out of human being, the people who are theistic are better than atheist. Out of theistic, the people who are believer of uh, impersonal form and personal form. So the one who are believer of the personal form are better than impersonal form. Among the personal form, the people who are believing, in demigods and other, uh, other personalities, the people who are believing in Vishnu, they are better. But the one who are worshipping Sri Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are the best. That's Shastra says. Yishwara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Adi Adi Govinda Sarva Karanam Karnam. It's not somebody's personal explanation. So that is how we can see the spectrum of the consciousness. There is basically different level of consciousness. So these people of the demoniac mentality, they fall very low on the consciousness pattern, on the consciousness spectrum, and they do things which are not supported by Shastra. So going to verse number 19. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of lives. So those who are envious and mischievous of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna is saying that that person are the lowest among the mankind. I perpetually cast them into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. So Krishna is saying that they get trapped into the cycle of material existence, and they get caught into samsriti, which means punarapi janamam, punarapi marnam. They take birth, they die, and they continue moving into this bhausagar. They continue moving into this place of misery and suffering. So why they are suffering? Because they have envy. They have envy towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are blaspheming the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are a mischievous and envious person. So what they will do? What they will do? Even Krishna will help them. Their envy has to go away. They have to come to the stage where they do not have envy for Supreme Personality of Godhead. And before they have no envy for Supreme Personality of Godhead, they have to show very strong performance being into this material world, that they do not have envy for any living being. They do not have envy for even they are Vaishnava or they are not the Vaishnava. And that's what is basically Utmadhikari. Utmadhikari, they do not see anybody who are their envy. So this envy has to go, and bhakti is the process by which we slowly and slowly work on ourselves and try to diminish or try to burn this envious mentality, and slowly come to uh, pure existence. So verse number 20 also continues along the same line, that says, Ashuri yoni mapna mudha janmani janmani. Wow. Mam prapeva kontaya tato yantaya dhamma tato yantaya dhammam gati. So attaining repeated birth amongst the demoniac species, such fools can never approach me. Janmani Janmani. They keep on moving in the cycle of samsara. Mama prapeva Kaunteya can never approach me, O son of Kunti. Tato yantaya dhamam gati. Tato yantaya dhamam gati. Gradually they sink down to the lowest status of life. So if this demoniac mentality is not going to cast off, then they keep on going down. They keep on sinking to the lower and lower and lower planetary system. The placing of a particular individual soul in a particular body is the prerogative of the Supreme Will. Those who have Asura mentality will not get liberation. So living beings are position. That's called asthanam. And asthanam is one of the subject of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's mentioned, in detail, Skanda 5, where different planetary system is mentioned, Bhumandala, and then hellish planetary system, and then upper planetary systems are mentioned, and based upon their bhava, their degree of advancement, their consciousness, their position. The living beings are positioned at different at different planets. So we are positioned in Jambodipa, Bharatvarshe, America, Deshe, Bijori Rajya, Chesterfield Nagare, something like that. Rama Acharya Avastita, something like that, So we are situated, we all are positioned based upon our uh, consciousness. And if we develop, if we advance in our consciousness, then we'll be positioned higher and higher and higher. And if we degrade in our consciousness, then we'll be demoted lower and lower and lower. And then basically 28 hellish planetary systems are mentioned. So Canto 5th of Srimad Bhagavatam talks in detail about positioning of the soul, positioning of the living being based upon their consciousness, based upon their relationships towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what happens is that doesn't matter either one is positioned on the middle planetary system, which is Bhumandala, or to the lower planetary system, or the higher planetary system. The laws of material world applies everywhere. So maybe the dimension of time will change, maybe the other circumstances around will change, but Janma, Mritu, Jara, Vyadhi, these four will exist everywhere. So it's not like that when soul is upgraded to the higher planetary system, then they are not within the jurisdiction of the material world. That's not true. It may happen that Lord Brahma, who is the Param, Jiva, forefathers of all the living beings, and his planet is the highest most in the material universe. But he also has to go through this Mritu Jara Vyadhi. Maybe his lifespan is longer. Maybe the opulences are different. Maybe the degree of pleasure is different, because that's the result of his consciousness. He is, not. He's not envious, but he's also not fully liberated person. Or sometimes Lord himself comes and serves as Lord Brahma. But the point here is that the higher the consciousness, the more degree of freedom one gets. The lower the consciousness, the more restrained life one will get. The more restrained consciousness one will get. And in a very broad sense, there is anavrita consciousness, where there is symptom of life, but consciousness is very dull, very, very dull. An example can be given, plants kind of thing. There is symptom of life, but almost there is no consciousness. So this is anavrita consciousness. And then higher than anavrita is sankuchita consciousness, where consciousness is restrained. And mostly animals or other insects and other living being, low category living being will come in that category, where they can walk but cannot talk, where they can talk little bit but they cannot understand. They can feel the pain but they cannot express their pain. And then the highest most consciousness is mukulita consciousness, where one has more freedom, and they can show wider dimension of their consciousness in terms of emotional feeling, in terms of dealings, in terms of talking the inherent, intrinsic type of thing, which is very subtle, very good, those type of things one can express and one can realize. and by taking the process of bhakti, that consciousness basically, it's like example of a budding flower. It's like the flower starts opening up. So once we engage in the process of bhakti, then our consciousness is basically opening up, and then the dimension increases. The revelation, the way we reveal things about material world, about living being, is very different. So the realization that devotee has is very unique, and nobody had that type of realization. So this asthanam part I wanted to little bit talk, because this is very important. It's very important to understand that we all have been positioned in a certain environment, okay, which was not chosen by any one of us, okay, and that positioning that we have been given is a result of our consciousness. From that positioning, if we awaken our consciousness, then we will be opening ourselves up, and Krishna will open the other dimensions of consciousness, where we will reveal, we'll understand some good subject, some depth understanding about this nature, about everything that is around us. But if we misutilize that positioning, then we are going to be restrained in our consciousness and will go down. So this is a very important concept to understand, that whatever is given to us, it should be properly utilized to awaken our consciousness. Okay, so with that, I'm getting into the last slide of this chapter, and in this chapter we are going to see this fourth series of verses are very much Falashruti. It's going to basically give us the essence of this chapter. So we'll go through these verses, and then if we get some time, we'll have some discussion. So verse number 21, very famous verse. This verse talks about three gates to hell. So what is that? Trividham narakashyadam dwaram nasna atmanah kama krodhastha lobhas tasmadetrayam tajet. Tasmadetrayam tajet. Trividham narkasyadam dwaram nasnatmanah काम क्रोधस तथा लोभस तस्मादेत तत्त्रयम एतत्त्रयम त्यजेत. So very famous word again here, Kam Krodha is coming. So there are three gates leading to this hell that cause the degradation of the soul. So we are talking about awakening our consciousness, or we are talking about restraining also ourselves. So there are three three gates that lead the soul to hell, and that is mentioned here. It says kama, krodhas tatha lobhas. So kam, krodha, and lobha, they are lust, anger, and greed. These are the three gates that lead one to hell. Tasmad etat trayam tyajet. Tasmad etat. Trayam means three. Tyajet means should leave. So every sane man should give them up. So these three, lust, anger, and greed, should be given up by any intelligent man. Why? We'll read in verse number 22. Etar vimuktah konteya tamo dwares trivir naraha achratyatmanah sriyasto tato yati param gatim. So why these three things should be given up, because Krishna is saying here, the man who has escaped these three gates of hell, O son of Kunti, performs acts conducive to self-realization and thus gradually attain the supreme destination. Achratyatmanah shreyas tatuh yati param gatim. So he conducts himself on the path of self-realization. So the person who has escaped these three dosha, lust, anger, and greed, and who have conducted themselves on the path of self-realization, that person gradually attains the supreme destination. So very much this verse is telling us that why one should give up the demoniac quality, because without giving up the asuri pravriti, one is not going to attach, one is not going to be shamanvita, not going to be completely merged or submerged on the path of self-realization. So the self-realization has to be awakened by dropping the demoniac qualities. Okay, and then last two verses are very powerful verse. So what happens? How the demoniac quality gets into one's existence, and how one can come out of this demoniac quality. So verse number 23 is a star verse, dear devotees. I just wanted to mention that. यह शास्त्र विधिम उत्सृज्य यह शास्त्र विधिम उत्सृज्य वर्तते कामकारतः. यह शास्त्र विधिम उत्सृज्य वर्तते कामकारतः न सः सिद्धिं वाप्नोति न सुखम न पराम गतिम. Beautiful verse. We always recently, we don't cite the Sanskrit word most of the time, but the translation of this particular verse, normally when we talk, we give lecture, we cite it very frequently. Nasha siddhim vapnopti, na sukham, na param gatim. So, he who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor liberation. Okay, so acting as per injunction of Shastra is very important. And how we can act as per the instruction of Shastra? If we read. And how we read? If we do the Bhakti Shastri course. If we force ourselves to find different means, methods to somehow or other read Shastra, understand Shastra, so that we can conduct as per the guidance of the Shastra. Shruti, Smriti, Purana, Adi, Panchratri, Vidhi, Vina, Aikanta Harir Bhakti, Utpadayo Kevalam. So, even one is exclusively Aita, even if one is exclusively engaged in worshipping Hari, refers to Vishnu, Krishna, but if that worship is not as per the guidance of the Smriti, Shruti, Purana, or Pancharatri Vidhi. Utpadaiva Kevalam. It's just the disturbance. So it's very important that bhakti should be followed under the guidance of Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu. And when we talk about surrendering ourselves to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it doesn't happen that we act whimsically, jena tena prakarena, and show that I have advanced too much in bhakti. And suddenly one day we'll surrender and we'll become pure devotee. My dear friends, devotee doesn't happen like that. The basic process is that we should be submissive. We have to learn the process of submissiveness by trying to abide ourselves, by trying to enforce ourselves, trying to align ourselves with the instructions of Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu, which means anything that is following within this category, we should be submissive to that. And then by developing that submissiveness, we are basically following the bona fide process. And then with that process, we'll attain param happiness. We'll attain supreme perfection. So here he says that nasa siddhim apnoti na sukham na param gatim. But if one's conduct his life as per the instruction of Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu, especially Shastra here, he will achieve eternal happiness and he will go back to home, back to Krishna. So that's what we are reading from this verse. I just want to read few lines of purport. That is very important. So a man theoretically know all these things. A man theoretically know all these things. Means whatever we just spoke. So a man might have all this knowledge. But if he does not apply them in his own life, then he is to be known as the lowest of the mankind. In the human form of life, a living entity is expected to be sane and to follow the regulations given for elevating his life to the highest platform. But if he does not follow them, then he degrades himself. But even if he follows the rules and regulations and moral principles and ultimately does not come to the stage of understanding the Supreme Lord, then all his knowledge becomes spoiled. And even if he accepts the existence of God, but if he does not engage himself in the service of the Lord, his attempts are spoiled. Therefore, one should gradually raise himself to the platform of Krishna consciousness and devotional service. It is then and there that he can attain the highest perfectional stage, not otherwise. So why I read that verse? This verse is saying that application is important. Knowing Shastra, of course, is Saranam, Mananam, Nididhyasnam, then Asmaranam. There is 4 steps. So first step is that the Saranam has to be there. The Shabd Brahman has to be received. So Saranam has to be there. And then after Saranam, contemplation comes, Mananam comes. And then after Mananam, Nitidhyasnam, means application. Okay. So in this particular purport, Prabhupada is saying that one should know Shastra, one should follow the Shastra. Means one should know Shastra, one should contemplate on the teaching of Shastra, and then one should act on the teaching of Shastra. Because even if one behaves as per some norms, as per some conducts, shows some morality, but if he is not engaged in worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he is imperfect. His morality or his following up of some conduct has no value. So other point that is being mentioned here in very summarized way, if I say what I read, is that number one, application is very important, and then application should lead to the conclusion where one is engaged in devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so that's what basically is the essence here, that one should apply the teaching, and that application should lead one to engage in devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is basically Ashmarnam. If one is engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then slowly and slowly they will have the remembrance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is Asmarnam. So Shastra plays very, very important role. Okay, even one is not studying the Shastra, one must follow the teachings of Shastra as given by Guru or as given by Sadhu. But one must conduct their life as per the teaching of Shastra to fully situate in the process of bhakti. Then I'll read the last verse, powerful verse once again. Tasmach shastram pramanam te karya vyavasthitau karya vyavasthitau gyatva shastra vidhanoktam karma kartum irhashi. So that verse says that therefore, from the evidence of a scripture, one should understand what is duty and what is not. Knowing these regulations of the scripture, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. So Shastra should be used to understand what is to be done and what is not to be done. And what that does, that basically helps one to elevate in their consciousness. So beautiful chapter. So this chapter conclusion, this chapter has described how those who follow the scripture attain liberation and those who do not follow a scripture go to hell. So in fact, if we try to put the summary of this chapter, in the very beginning, we saw that the criteria that is being used to differentiate between Shura and Ashura is Shastra. Based upon the Shastric understanding, we know who is Shura and who is Ashura, who is, of Ashura Pravritti. And if one is on the Asuri Pravritti, then so he's acting as, he's acting against the injunctions of Shastra. But once he start abiding the rules and guidance of Shastra, then he slowly and slowly can turn into a divine personality and can elevate his or her consciousness and become fully Krishna consciousness. Okay, this is very beautiful chapter. The essence is that this chapter will help us situate ourselves fully with complete understanding on the process of bhakti. Okay, so many times, we hear so much discussion about devotee also kind of fighting, saying that XYZ personality is as good as Krishna, or 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 is like Krishna, or it's okay if I'm not worshipping Krishna, I'm worshipping XYZ, and then that will be equally good. But 2 points to be noted here. In previous chapter, verse number 19 said that the one who knows Krishna, who has come to the platform of worshipping Supreme Personality of Godhead, is knower of everything. Okay, so if Shastra is saying, Krishna is saying here that the one who worship me is knower of everything. Okay, and then here also we studied that people who are doing things not aligning or not aligned with the teaching of Shastra, they are just utpattayo hi kevalam. They are just creating the disturbances. So if we put these 2 points together, what we come to conclude is that one should act as per the instruction of the Shastra, and by hook and crook, whatever way. All of us are so fortunate. We did not basically, follow the step-by-step process to come to this stage where we started chanting the name of Krishna, or we took the bhakti of Krishna. But it was our good fortune that we gotten this chance to worship Supreme Personality of Godhead. But that is the highest most goal. This is the highest most that one can achieve. So even if we study all the Shastra, it will bring us to this point where one should, with complete surrender, with complete focus, try to worship Lord Sri Hari, Sri Krishna, as Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, and that will make us a divine personality. So very beautiful chapters. All the chapters are so beautiful, and normally we take 1 or 2 verse and then we give Sunday lecture. So in this session we have to basically proceed and try to finish chapters. So we are going a little faster, but I'm hoping that it should be sufficient, and it should be giving you sufficient in understanding what we have been going through as we are going from one chapter to another. So with that, I would like to give a pause. If there is 1 or 2 questions that anybody would like to ask or share, or any realizations you have, we can do that, and then we'll adjourn. Atmasambhavitah stabdha dhanman madantah vijante nam yagashte nam yagyayaste dambho na vidhi dambhe na vidhi purvakam. Hare Krishna, anybody, anything? Okay. So if not, then I'm going to chant Vaishnava pranams. Vanchikal Haribol. Vanchikalpatarubhyasya kripa sindhubhya evasya patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Symbol Bhakti Vrind ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai. The savior of the whole world, His Divine Grace Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Nandi Hari Hari Bo. Thank you so much. Hari Hari, thank you.
Thank
Prabhu.
you. Thank you for a nice class, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Hari
Hare
Bol.
Dandavats everybody. Hare Krishna.
Dandavats pranams.
Hari Hari, thank you. Hare Krishna. Hari Bol.